I didn't even want to do it this way, but I tried to post a video on my little snap box, but it was snapping off at me, telling me I ain't do it right, sending it to all the irregular places. But I was talking about the conceptualization of turning something into nothing, from nothing into something, to make something intangible tangible, and the discrepancies of it is not in flux, but upon a time, like we usually talk about it like through propaganda. And mainstream propaganda today exists in politics, or as though we kind of stray from faith. But my point that I was making is that when you're trying to conceptualize the thoughts and ideals to be something greater than what you are, your agenda kind of speaks up for yourself. Like social endeavors come in, like environmental factors, from where you live to how you lived and where you come from, to, you know, social variables that come in from like where you went to school at, where you learn your how you change your thought and where your school of thought is headed, and then like, you know, where your goals are oriented at. But I was saying, like, if you kind of like take yourself out of the trance and localize the point, like if you're out here being flat out, like if you're right here with white folks and you're talking about how the conceptualization of modernization in today's period in society makes it seem like the mainstream agenda now is to be brought upon, to say that technology is now existing upon reality. But the realist in me always thinks that if it's a technological advantage to say that socialism and fascism and racism are all just dependent upon the person in which they come from, making it less mainstream and more of a social agenda, it makes the priority of it mean like it's more of a personalized thing. So that can be technically a retrograde if it's saying that the retrograde is saying that technology is a falsality of reality, making it a little bit more fake, phony, and kind of propagandized upon. But when you're out here with the white folks, it's like they be like supreme or die. Like if anything is welcome, is the fact that you want to better yourself as a human being. You want to, you know, not solicit the things that make you negative and harm you, that keep you into the place of discernment, but to keep you into a place of hospitality, grace, and, you know, what makes you bewildered is only things that can find enlightenment in. But the same thing happens over here in the hood. Like if I'm running around with my niggas and whatever like that, I'm talking about things, trying to better myself, but they're misconceptualize the fact that they think that it's propaganda based on the fact that it's coming from word of mouth, and that's not a stray from the point, because that is. If I'm saying something out of my mouth and it makes it seem like propaganda, then it means that it's reaching someone to the point where it's becoming something solid. Like it's now tangible. It's ears to mouth, mouth to the most technological advancement that we have of as a human being is to relay a conversation and communicate. So if we're using our words to kind of like influence people, then that's the best thing that we have. But today we're not doing that. We're doing it a little bit differently, whereas though we have different platforms in which we use to speak, which gives our tongue a multiple personality. Like when we're on Twitter, we pretty much have no filter. When we're on Instagram, we're pretty much giving the most aesthetic that we can give about ourselves and where our situation is. And when we're on Facebook, we're a little bit more candid based off of the fact that it's family and friends that we've known through, you know, schooling and neighborhood treaties, making it seem a little bit more like a peer. Like we appear to be something more of a social person. And then when we're on like email, we kind of tend to use a little bit more semantics and coming back a little bit more professional, giving it a little bit more of a grunt and saying like, okay, let's not be disgruntled about it, but we do want to give it less more of a, you know, propagandized way about where we come from, because when they're on a setting that makes it seem like this platform has to be a little bit more up to par, you know, and whether it be faith or whether it be politics. But like when you're around black people, they don't speak like that. They speak a little bit more blunt. You know, they'll say something like, you know, well, I feel like Trump is a bitch. And then you go into the deductions of why you think Trump is a bitch. And they give you the whole reasons behind it, where it's just like you can't really capitalize on it because it makes a person seem like their opinion doesn't matter. So if you're like trying to be better for what you want to be in life around hood people, then eventually those hood people are going to try to bury you because they see what you're going at and they see your goals and achievements and they want to be the same thing. So it's pretty much the same statement over time, whatever trade you have, whether you're black or you're white, and everything in between or everything outside of it, supreme or die. Like, you want to be the best person that you want to be. You want to be the better version of who you can be. You want to actualize and conceptualize everything that you think and who you are, because that's what our purpose here on earth is. This is the platform that I've been giving. This is the platform we've all been giving. There is no debate about it, because there is literally nothing here except for anything to be made, anything to be built, anything to be founded upon. Like, that's where foundation comes. That's where we plant seeds. That's where ideas grow. Nothing. We take nothing and we make it into something based off how people respond to it. Now, if I'm saying supreme or die, I'm thinking around white folks, supreme or die literally means let the race begin. But around black folks, it's just like, yo, if you're not impressive enough, then you just gonna die. And I understand that conceptually, like, it makes it seem like if you don't think or act like me in a better way, if you're not self-involved, if you're not, in a predicament that make me feel like you're just, like, impressive enough or influential enough, then you're probably going to go through some hardships, some trials, some tribulations. But my whole thing is the cycle comes in so quick that you don't even have a moment where you just be, like, disgruntled about it, because you just be like, let's wreak havoc because this person feel like they're better than us. But that's the same agenda that the white folks have too, like, where they make it seem like mainstream media is the only kind of propaganda between us, but they just don't be trying to understand what we're saying without it being relatable in their time and facets. So if you're saying something, if you're speaking on something like Trump and he's discussing the sanctions with trades between China, and he happened to be discussing that conversation with somebody who's a representation or prime minister of Australia, and then you're going to want to equivocally get involved and make it feel like you want to be a part of it. So you're going to press the point, and then your press point might be a little bit more authentic than someone may say. So you might come in with a little bit of local jargon like period. And you hear it and you're thinking like, well, what's going on? Conceptualize this. And then you're thinking, well, it's definitely a scrutiny upon the times, because the technological advancement states there that if you say anything about mainstream media or anything about anything that's happening on outside of propaganda and you get into nothing, then it states there that you want to capitalize on it. So you want to put some money in there. So you want to put some numbers in there. And not to just like bring awareness to this, but this is something you should already know. Numbers is definitely a book in the Bible. You can look that up and check into it. So like our coding, our system, the way we think, the way we were built, is not just necessarily it's not just necessarily something that we just like came upon and just like stumbled upon and started doing and moving towards it. We put purpose into reasons. We put reasons into our distinct capabilities and incapabilities. Like, we make things happen because we want to understand ourselves more. We seek what we sought because we find that what we lack is not something that we can kind of like build upon. So we have to make ourselves better by actually taking nothing and making it into something. But a lot of people right now are talking about how disoriented we are, how we're just talking about anything and everything, how the collision of both races on any side of the field is not turning into trade, but more so of a versus. So it's getting a little acapellic and everyone's just kind of like saying what they feel and feeling what they're saying. It's sounding like harmony, but this is disillusion. Okay, like, don't fall for that strategy that white people and black people have, because their agenda does not change. They're still harboring on feelings of the past. The timeline has not shifted that much to the point where the flux is saying like, look, you're black and I'm white, and we can move past this and we can move forward and we can push forward and propel ourselves into a better future. Like, we all know this is possible. We all know this is something that we're stagnant upon because we still want to know what exactly race is. And I'm here to tell you, race is this. Race is a duality. It inspires the theory that reality is reality, which is a transient thought that states that things exist simply because they are. And there's an existential point that says on the other side that race is conceptualized by, how do you call it? The legitimacy of existing. So where anything is legitimate has reason to exist based on the fact that we can think and feel about it. But if there is realism involved, there is a theory that says that if it's real, then it exists in those existential properties of, push and pull and faith, yin and yang, things like that. Like, so if something is real, then it has to exist because there is an influence that it has on its surroundings and its way that it's like introduced into society. But the legitimacy of something actually existing is not necessarily reality, but it is existentialism, which kind of like questions the existence of reality and whether or not this is definitely a platform of reality. So anything that's real can be real, but anything unreal can also be mistaken for being real. So if I should say that anything happens, it's just mainly just like correspondence to how I'm looking at things and how it's happening, like whether to reiterate like things are just bad or things are just like happening. Some things are happening and you like tend to look at it from a personal standpoint, like, okay, I'm going through some shit, and that's just pretty much how I'm looking at everything right now. So if you're going through something and you want to like rationalize your point, then you're thinking like, if something is harming you, then it's not definitely healing you. So if it's something that's harming you, is not healing you, then you don't have the antidote for that. So you choose to just say you don't give a fuck. But apathy is never the answer for those things. Like, finding a reason and purpose to exist is the most sustainable thing that we have as a human being. The most restrainable and constrainable resource that we have is to find purpose. Like, it is the most abundant resources that we have is our minds. Okay, it exists there for a reason. Is malleable, is fixable. It's definitely in a state that we can play with it. Like, we find so many uses for it, but we don't realize that manipulation is definitely a human trait. Like, the way we strategize and conceptualize to what caliber or degree is really rationalizations of how we want to will and what we will, whether you will not, or whether you will say, or whether you will anything that's outside of those things. There's a lot of things that you can like put your inhibitions into, and you will fuel wherever you want to achieve. But my whole thing right now is that I'm just like going through it because like I don't know what the fuck I want to do. Like, I'm just having a realization of like where I'm actually at in life, and I'm not sure if I'm somewhere special or somewhere off put, because like I'm so much hooked onto what is it called? Capitalization? Concept. What is that thing that everyone talks about? Capitalism. I'm so hooked on what capitalism has saying that it has me caught in a trance, and I'm definitely thinking that maybe it's just something that would be a phase. Like, when the 90s came, we had technology, and technology kind of came in abruptly and said like, okay, we're here, we're queer, we're a little bit interested. But with all things new, there comes porn, so it got a little bit sexual. And then we just now started cleaning up. Like, the millennials just now are starting to clean up. And I think it has a lot to do with experience, because right now I am entering into my third decade of life, and I am still feeling shifty about where exactly I'm at right now. Like, I don't necessarily have a definite position in life, and I'm stable enough to say that I can do what I want to do or go where I want to go. But there are no limits there. Like, I don't feel like if I had any type of reasons outside of that I would feel like I'm like kind of shackled by anything, or felt like I'm like kind of drawn to anything in particular. I'm just kind of here existing, and I'm trying to figure out like how to properly align myself with certain aspects of who I want to be and what I've been doing, and how can I change, and what I can actually say that I've learned from. And all in all, it's removed a lot of different people from my life and put a lot of different instances in my life, and it's impacted me very much so, like in a way that I can't even express so much through dialogue, where I sometimes feel like I want to emote things and grunt about it and feel like atypical or irregular about it. But the main part that I'm really want to press right now is that capitalism is not the problem right now. White supremacy is not the problem. And if we take a look at with the semantics of what white and black is, basically it's just like, I think black is the most beautiful color ever when it's according to people. I mean, because when I see a black person, I'm always struck by how abundant the light hits their skin, how boldly they stand, how they stand out in a crowd based off of just how bright the skin glows. Like, black to me is not a dark color, it's a bright color. Now, when I look at white, I think the connotations that's really, kind of associated with it from a perspective that's just like neutral and not really black nor white. It's just as like white is a bright color. It's like, the great white hope, like all, like it's just like associated with grace and, those things that make white what it is. The stigma behind it. Now, I'm thinking black is the same way. Like, I haven't been recently looking at it, and I'm thinking like the facets of what make black what it is just definitely that. Like, and if it is just a color, then the predisposition that we're in is that people are basically taking the color of one's skin and making it a conceptualized fate of humanity. Like, you're literally like driving forces based off of how someone looks without actually getting to know them. Now, that's not the best way to get to know someone, but it is a way to get to know someone, you know. Now, I'm thinking that maybe it could be that there are many theories that go into what race is, what propaganda is, and politics, but I don't chase my own tail, so I don't really want to like go back into like thwarting the point that I was trying to make, which is saying that, you know, white supremacy and white nationalism is not the issue right now. Violence is, you know, like people not able to reason with one another and deduct the better situation to come out of swarms so easily and to make it seem like it's something to talk about rather than just like something to do something about. We have to show restraint when we feel anger, and we have to show progressiveness where we fear. And if that doesn't change, then we're just all going to be left out. But I don't want to leave like thinking that I just did something to make it seem like I was done. That's not really what my aim is. That's not really the message that I'm trying to give. And right now, I feel like the most influential thing that I can do is just by trying to set a better example for everything else that I see rather than trying to, you know, change people. Because if you set an example and influence people, it's better that they want to change themselves than rather you try to change them.